From the East Texas Sports Network studios, powered by Texas Dairy Queen, a tradition of excellence, the ETSN podcast, where Clint Buckley and Mike Graham offer their, well, they just talk. But who really cares? It's what they do best. It's the lowdown on everything high school football in East Texas. And now, Clint Buckley and Mike Graham.
One more week, folks. In just a couple of more days, the high school football season will come to an end. And 3 East Texas teams could be bringing home state championships for Christmas. Welcome to the ETSN.fm podcast. I am Clint Buckley, and I'm joined as always by Mike Graham. What's new, Mike?
Not too much. Season's really heating up, huh?
Yeah. And you know what? We've got 4 teams in Arlington this week. 3 games. 2 of them are playing each other for the second straight year. It's a great time of the year, but it's also a sad time of the year because after this week, there's no more high school football to cover this year.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be tough, but I am going to like the free time that I'm about to.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I am not doing anything next week. I'm on vacation. I'm not doing anything at all. But yeah, this is going to be a great weekend. Last year we just had the one game, Kilgore against Carthage, and it was great. This week the week leading up to the game, we did a lot of in-depth stuff on both of those 2 schools, and we've got all 4 of the schools that we covered this year. We've got those stories coming this week. We've got a couple up already, but it's all going to start Thursday. We've got 2 games Thursday: Wascom against Newton at 5:00. Followed by Mineola versus Camarillo at 8-ish.
Yeah,
and then
more like 9:30.
Exactly. And then it all finishes up for us at high noon Friday with the 4A Division II championship game between Gilmer and West Orange Stark. So a lot to cover in this podcast, and we'll get right into it. And we'll start with the first game, Wascom versus Newton for the 3A Division II championship and All East Texas state championship. Second straight year that we've had one, and for the 3rd time since 2010, we'll have East Texas teams squaring off against one another for the state championship game. The best thing about that is one of them's going to win.
Yeah.
East Texas is going to get at least one state title.
You're guaranteed one, and it's pretty nice how Region 2 and Region 3 split right here in the area in most classifications below Class 5A. And it's really fun. It's fun to talk about this, like, what sub-region of this Texas sub-region plays the best football. And a lot of things I really like about this game. I think you've got a lot of college prospects running around in this one. You know, when you look at Kevin Johnson and June Bug Johnson, they're guys that want to go to college, and they're trying to get their testing scores high enough, and that's the biggest barrier for them. And then you've got Ronnie Elam, who's going to Texas A&M for Newton. I think Callum Foster's a pretty good player that could end up somewhere within the FBS, FCS system of football teams.
Absolutely.
So I mean, it's going to be a fun game, and both teams have strengths, and I think that Newton's in a good position because it's got no glaring weaknesses. I think that Wascom's defense is a bit behind Newton's, but they can make up for it with 5 really dynamic running athletes compared to Newton's 3.
Yeah, and we talk about the athletes in this game, and the name of the game Thursday at 5:00 is speed. I mean, it's speed on speed. We talked about Kevin Johnson. He's a legit 4.4 40-yard dash guy. And then you talk about Newton, Calum Foster and Ronnie Elam. They were both on the state championship 4x100 relay team last spring. So, and it's not just those 2 guys, and it's not just Kevin Johnson for Wascom. I mean, it's there are multiple players that can run really fast in this game. I think that's what Gabe Brooks may have tweeted Friday night when he realized that both Wascom and Newton had clinched state title berths, and he's right on the money. I mean, this is really uncommon for this level, 3A Division II, which would be the old 2A Division II, to have this many dynamic athletes on the same field. You don't get this very often, but it goes to show you that how deep the talent pool here is in East Texas when you've got 2 of the smallest schools that we cover, and they've got athletes that you'd find on levels higher, 4A and 5A.
Yeah, you're right. And, watching this game on TV for so many years, the 2A Division II game is never very good. Or, 3A, well, I guess the old 2A Division II game, it's not ever very good. And I think that this year you've got a lot of parity.
And the 2 teams are really similar.
Yeah, they are. And Yeah, I think that this is definitely a game that people are going to be tuning into, and something I want to talk a little bit more about with, Wascom Newton, and then the game immediately after it, Mineola Cameron Yo, is how well they're going to perform on TV that night, because the NFL game it's terrible. It's the Titans versus the Jaguars. They're both 2-10 teams. The Spurs aren't playing, the Mavericks aren't playing, and the Dallas Stars aren't playing. Only the Houston Rockets and New Orleans Pelicans.
So regionally, you're going to have a lot of eyes on this game, most likely.
It should clean up, and I mean, even better, most of the TV shows on the networks, they've suspended for the holidays.
Right.
They didn't produce an episode this week, so I think that these two games.
So unless you're really
dominate.
big into Christmas TV programming, you might want to check this game out.
Right. I mean, if you like Charlie Brown a whole lot, you might want to go that way. But
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
These games are going to be good, and I do think that they're going to be high yield, and I think that people are going to be talking about them the next morning.
Interesting thing about these two, it's kind of a redemption road for both of these schools. If you look at their recent histories, Wascom, of course, lost in the semifinal round a season ago to Refugio. And Newton, the last couple of years, have gone into playoff games as huge favorites, undefeated, huge favorites, and lost. Cameron Yo defeated Newton in the semifinals 2 years ago. And then last year, White Oak kind of jumps up out of nowhere and beats them on their way to the semifinals. So I think both teams, while they're happy that they're here, I think both of them are taking on the mindset that this is unfinished business, and that they're not just happy to be here. I think they're going to Arlington on a mission, and that's good, because the last thing you want to see is a team, like a Wascom or a Newton for that matter, just be happy to be there and just get run out of the building. It's always sad to see. They accomplished their goal of getting to the final game of the year, but then to have it end in a blowout fashion, it's always sad to me.
Yeah, and losing state championship games ruins Christmases for people.
Yes.
Because, it's right. Christmas Day is right on the heels of these games. A lot of things you could call this game. The All-East Texas game. I like to call it the East Texas Super Bowl, but in the case of these two teams, it's kind of the over-the-hump bowl.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge achievement, and they should be very proud of what they've done. But one more game to go against a team that very much mirrors themselves, no matter if you're on the Wascom side or Newton side.
Yeah, both teams run the ball, don't throw it very often at all. I will say one thing about this game is the two teams enter. Wascom's coming off a dramatic semifinal win. It did not look good for them late in that game against Sonora last week. They were down. They were deep in their own territory with about 2 minutes to play. And then Dylan Benton, probably one of the most unheralded of their backs, breaks off a 71-yard touchdown run and gives them the lead. And then Wascom's defense has to put the nail in the coffin late in the game. Sonora gets down inside the 5-yard line, right, I believe, and they've eventually run out of time, and Wascom wins. And Newton, meanwhile, they're rolling. They've won 11 in a row. They began the year 1-3. I know you and I talked early in the year on the podcast about how we weren't sure about Newton because they had lost. They'd lost to Tatum pretty handily. In the first game of the year. They get a win over a very down Bridge City team. They have a bye. They lose to Henderson, which was in a game that was pretty competitive. I think it was a 9-point loss.
Yeah.
And then they lose to Orangefield. And then it was at that point that at least me, I was kind of
writing them off.
I was kind of writing them off.
Yeah.
I have to be honest with you. They were 1-3 at that point, and they lost to a team that really they had no business losing to. And with the game against West Orange Stark the very next week, I said, okay, that's it. They're going to lose to West Orange Stark. They're going to go into district at 1-4. They got Corrigan Camden waiting for them in that district, and they've been rolling. They were undefeated, ranked as high as I think number 4 in the state. I just didn't know if Newton had enough time to get things turned around before the playoffs began, and boy, was I wrong. Yeah. That week, the week after the Orangefield loss, they beat West Orange Stark, which of course is playing for a state championship a level higher. So Newton's been rolling. They've outscored their playoff opponents by an average of 32 points per game. Their defense has come along this year. They had to replace a lot of guys at the beginning of the season. I think the key matchup is going to be which defense can do the best job, limiting the big plays from the other offense, because that's what both of these two teams do. While they're very run heavy, they're very explosive in the running game. So I think that's a big key.
Yeah, you're right. Another thing you want to point out is that in both cases for Wascom and Newton, it appears that they've run into their toughest opponent yet. Their regions were decent, but they weren't absolutely loaded. And
you know what?
These two teams are pretty loaded.
You know what? I think Newton's road was decidedly more difficult than Wascom's. If you just look at the teams that Newton had to beat, I mean, they had to beat Franklin, which is a perennial regional power in football. Blanco was undefeated, and they had destroyed everybody. Blanco, yeah, I know, but I mean, Newton beat them pretty soundly.
Yeah,
and that says something. I don't know that Wascom faced the level of opponent. I don't think Wascom played a weak playoff schedule. I just think that Newton's was a little bit more difficult, and I think Newton overall played the tougher schedule of the two. If you look at Newton played all 4A teams in non-district.
Yeah.
I mean, they played Tatum, they played, we mentioned Bridge City, they played Orangefield, they played Henderson, and then West Orange Stark. And then they had a tough district with Corrigan, Camden, and Crockett in there too. So that could be a difference. I think we'll have to wait and find out. But I really think the big key in this one will be big plays. I mean, whichever team comes up with the most big plays, I think is going to win the game. And so that's something to look out for. Wascom Newton should be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for that one. It's a good thing that we don't have to wait very long, because that's the first game that we have Thursday, 5 o'clock, from AT&T Stadium in Arlington.
Yeah, 5 o'clock start suggests that the game's probably going to start around 5:45.
Yeah, because there are two games before then.
Yeah.
So
and a 45-minute warm-up period between each game. So
and then we've got
games roll in pretty late.
And then we've got Mineola and Cameron Yo, and boy, how about the Mineola Yellow Jackets? I mean, you've covered them the last couple of weeks. They are truly a Cinderella program, aren't they?
They really are, and that's something that I've heard thrown around on TV a lot leading up into these games. Of the 20 teams heading to AT&T Stadium, that this is the Cinderella team, and I'd have to agree with that. Not because they've done anything spectacular, pulled off any major upsets on the way, but just the fact that we did not anticipate them getting nearly as far in the playoffs.
I mean, they went undefeated in their district, but I mean, they were 0-3 to start. Mm-hmm. And their district wasn't as strong as I think you and I anticipated going into the season.
Right.
So
yeah, you thought White Oak would win the thing.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess if Mineola's Cinderella, does that make Cameron Yo like the stepmother, like the villain in this?
I'm not too familiar. I don't really remember Cinderella terminology. I
think it's a stepmother.
Stepmother, which stepmother or something?
I don't know. Snow White, wasn't there was that a stepmother, or was that just like a wicked witch, or I don't know. We're venturing off into things that we know nothing about.
Cameron Yo's the bad guy if you're in East Texas.
Right. Yeah, that's what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
And not anything against the people in the Yo program, because what I understand, they have a great group of young men. They did some great things leading up to their game last week against Edna. I think they raised a lot of money for the Edna player that was tragically killed in a house fire earlier in the year. I think they raised over $20,000 that week going into the game. So, I mean, personally, no. But as a team in East Texas, Cameron Yo, they're the big bad wolf. If you look at it, the last 2 seasons, of course, Yo is going for a three-peat. They're going for their 3rd straight state championship. And they've beaten some East Texas teams along the way to accomplish that. 2 years ago, they knocked off 2 of them, and back-to-back weeks. They beat Newton in the semifinals, which we referenced a little while ago, and then they beat Dangerfield in the state championship game. And then the last year, they rally from a huge deficit against White Oak in the semifinals and beat them, and then go on to win state the week after that. So, yeah, I guess you could call Cameron Yo East Texas's most wanted, I guess, if you're gonna talk about it in those terms. And Cinderella, whether you want to call Mineola Cinderella and Cameron Yo the stepmother, or whether you want to call Mineola, just David and Cameron Yo Goliath, if you want to go biblical on this whole thing. But I think Mineola is going to have its work cut out for it.
Yeah, you're right. Especially when they're facing Cameron Yo's offense. The quarterback, Reed Nickerson, he's thrown for more than 250 yards. Their running backs has run for more than 2,000 yards, and then they have two receivers that have caught for more than 1,000 yards apiece. So there are four big playmakers that Mineola's going to have to be concerned about. Fortunately, as always, I think they have an amazing defensive front, and that's a good thing to have to put some pressure on the quarterback and maybe create some traffic for the running back to have to dodge. But I'm going to put this game at the feet of Noah Snead and Aaron Stanford, who are two really good Mineola defensive backs who have done some nice things in the 3 playoff games I've seen, especially Stanford. I think he's factored into a takeaway in each of the past 3 games. So if they have a good game, they can keep close. I think that offensively, Mineola is going to want to try to control the tempo, and that means slowing the game down, burning time off the clock. Don't give Cameron Yo a lot of time to work with the ball. Try to limit their possessions in the game with long extended drives, and with Chance Perkins and Jeremiah Crawford there, while they're explosive, I think that they have the potential to be able to slow down this whole thing.
Yeah, Chance Perkins, we'd be remiss not to mention what he did last week. 370 yards?
372 yards. And,
Jeez.
I was like, man, I hope this is right when I was tallying it, and then I got a confirmation from the staff that it was indeed 372 yards.
That's amazing. To do that in a semifinal game?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that tells you a little something about Panhandle football, too. While Shallow Water in the game last week was able to rack up yards and had their own strong running back performance, they really shot themselves in the foot a lot. And
didn't have an answer for Mineola defensively.
And Cameron Yo is a much more athletic team than Shallow Water.
For sure. And, you know, we talk about Mineola rallying from their 0-3 start. Yo lost 4 of their first 6 games. Of course, they played some tough teams in non-district. I think they lost to Refugio. They lost to Rockdale in their district opener, and they have a couple of other, quote unquote good losses. But they've won, I guess, 9 in a row. They're 11-4 coming into the year, or coming into this state championship game. I guess you mentioned Mineola controlling the clock. I'm thinking they're going to have to get some turnovers too.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that front, and with guys like Noah Snead, who has an East Texas leading 8 interceptions, and then Stanford, who's just been, a really impressive defensive back the past few weeks. I think that there's potential for that. But yeah, they're going to have to get some takeaways in this game. And you think when you play a football game that you're pretty much guaranteed at least one punt at some point. They'll probably get that too, and they need to capitalize on pretty much every single opportunity they get in this game to hang around with the O.
So that game kicks off it won't kick off at 8, but it's scheduled for 8 o'clock.
Yeah, be there by 8, but don't be surprised if that game doesn't kick off till 9:30.
No, be there before 8. Come out and support the Wascom-Newton game before that. Support a couple of fellow East Texas schools, and that way you won't have to scramble to get a good seat for that game once the Wascom-Newton game is finished. So once those two teams are complete, we'll have maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep before we have to get back at it the next morning. Gilmer and West Orange Stark, noon Friday from AT&T Stadium in Arlington for the 4A Division II state championship game.
And that will be a noon start. Because I think
first
that's
game.
The first game that
day. Yes. So that game will start on time. And, of course, all of these games will be televised on Fox Sports Southwest Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So if you can't make it out, we hope everybody can make it out. But if you can't, television is always an option. So
high definition, too.
Exactly. Gilmer, West Orange Stark. We talked about Wascom and Newton having athletes all over the place. Gilmer and West Orange Stark is the same thing. There are athletes everywhere, and high-end athletes too. Athletes that you're going to be hearing about on Saturdays in the near future. You talk about Gilmer, Chris Boyd. We don't know where he's going to go yet. I guess the safe money is on the 4 schools: Florida State, A&M, Baylor, and Texas. Those are kind of been the 4 leaders, but he's got several more offers. Blake Lynch will be enrolling at Baylor after the Christmas holidays.
Yeah, I mean, when he plays that game, he, I guess, technically will no longer be a student at Gilmer.
Exactly right, because I guess their classes will be, I don't know if they're going to close class or cancel class on Friday, but
either way, they're not going to make it back to Gilmer by 3 p.m.
No. So that'll be, I guess,
that'll be it for him.
That his last day is a Gilmer Buckeye, and he talked a little bit about that last week after their demolition of Salina in the semifinal game. But Blake Lynch is going to Baylor, and you've got other guys that they're going to be playing football at the next level for Gilmer. McLean Carter is a guy out there that may have a couple of offers come his way before National Signing Day.
He's a good player.
Yeah, and you talk about West Orange Stark. They have 3 FBS commits at defensive back, and none more celebrated than their 5-star safety, Deontay Thompson, who is committed to Alabama. They've got 2 others, Johnny Shaw and Trey Spencer. Johnny Shaw, some of you may remember, used to be at center, and he transferred to West Orange Stark before his junior year. He's now a senior. Once upon a time had a Texas offer. That's since gone by the wayside. He is committed to La Tech, and as has Trey Spencer, their other good defensive back.
Assuming that Shaw's offer came from Mac Brown's staff, is that what happened?
Yeah, that probably is it. We kind of lost touch with him once he transferred out of the area, but that definitely could be a possibility. The offer being lost on account of a coaching change, but I think that's going to be the matchup. It's Gilmer's receivers and it's West Orange Stark's outstanding defensive backs. Gilmer, we've talked about this. You and I have both seen them this year. They're not just a straight passing team. They can run the ball. They will run the ball. Last week against Salina, they had 270 passing yards, 268 rushing yards.
Yeah,
so it was
nice balance.
It was almost right down the middle.
Yeah.
So
I think that there are ways to take this defensive backfield out of the game. Moving Chris Boyd to running back, which he's been doing recently. I think that you can run Blake Lynch as the Wildcat quarterback,
right?
And heck, you can even hand the ball off to him, and then you can beat them on screen passes and stuff with Boyd.
Mm-hmm.
So some good matchups, some favorable matchups for Gilmer in this game, despite the fact that they're going to be going up against a pretty elite 4A Division II backfield.
Yes, and West Orange Stark's defense, it seems like that's been their strength this season, especially if you look at what they've done in the playoffs. Against Lamarck, they shut out Lamarck. That's no easy feat.
Yeah, that's a big win.
34-0, I think the score was in that game. And then the very next week, they hold LaGrange, which was undefeated and kind of rolling everybody to 7 points. Beat them 42-7. And then, of course, last week, they get 3 scores, I think, in the second half, including a Deontay Thompson 101-yard punt return for a touchdown. Now, you're not supposed to field punts in the end zone, but I guess if you're Deontay Thompson and you can take it 101 yards to the end zone, why not?
Yeah, maybe a punter outkicked their coverage or something. That was
definitely
that's a pretty bad statistic.
That was definitely the play in that game last week that kind of they've kind of sealed the deal. I mean, I think it was 21-21 going into the fourth. And then West Orange Stark scores 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns, including that long punt return from Thompson. Gilmer's offense, one of the best in state history. If you just look at the numbers, 915 points scored this season. That's second most all-time in the state of Texas. And just think about that. Think about how long high school football has been played in this state. And only one other team has scored more points in a season than Gilmer, and that's last year's Aledo team.
Yeah, a nationally famous Aledo team, a team that really garnered the headlines when they got accused of bullying, which I don't think was true. I don't really know how many quarters Aledo actually sat its starters. I'm sure it was a lot.
Sure, it was similar to Gilmer.
Yeah, Gilmer, I mean, McLean Carter, he's a guy that's thrown for more than 3,700 yards, 46 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and he sat 20 quarters. So this team easily could.
And he split snaps with Blake Lynch at quarterback.
Right. I mean, this team could easily have the point record. I mean, if they really wanted it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a testament to how this team outclasses its competition. I think that they're in a favorable spot for this game.
And we talk about the offense and McLean Carter and everything, and you would think, okay, well that's their main guy, right? McLean Carter, he's I mean, while he's great, he's got great numbers. But you look at the 2 other big time players for Gilmer, that's Blake Lynch and Chris Boyd. What they've done this year has been ridiculous. I mean, Blake Lynch has 2,100 yards, and that's counting passing, rushing, and receiving stats. And he's accounted for 36 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Chris Boyd, on the other hand, while not really passing, I mean, it's more rushing and receiving, 1,700 yards on offense, and 30 touchdowns. So 66 touchdowns accounted for between both Boyd and Lynch. And that's just a little over half of Gilmer's touchdowns for the year.
Yeah, I mean, you really like their other receivers, Clint Llewellyn and Chase Tater's really special players. I think they've got upside for colleges.
Oh, for sure.
On an FCS level, probably. I mean, I think they're really, really good players. McLean Carter, you look at some quarterback situations across the state, and man, I'd love it if a place like Texas Tech picked him up after they lost, their 5-star quarterback out of Stephenville. I think that he'd be a good fit for their offense.
Watch the dominoes fall on that one, because you talk about Ben Hicks, the Midway quarterback who's committed to Houston. Tech's coming after him pretty hard, I understand.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't work out with Tech, needing a quarterback, Houston may end up needing a quarterback.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I guess the point is just getting to see Carter play on TV, I think, is going to be really good for him.
And just last week, college coaches were at the game at SMU against Salina, and they saw what he was able to do. He threw 6 touchdown passes on 9 completions.
Yeah.
So, the further you play in the playoffs, that drastically increases your exposure to college coaches, because this is big time recruiting season right now. The teams have not really yet begun their preparation for the bowl games. At least the teams that are playing in the later bowl games.
Right. Yeah.
And the coaches are spread out all across the country, watching their targets and maybe trying to find some new guys that they can bring in.
And right now, this specific week, they're in a dead period. They're not supposed to bother their recruits over the Christmas holiday, so they're probably just hanging out with their families and watching high school football. And, I mean, this is a great opportunity for players that have not received the exposure that they probably deserved, through the course of the regular season.
And I will say this: Chad Morris, SMU's new head coach, was in attendance for the Gilmer-Salina game, and it was played at his new home stadium. I would be really surprised if Carter didn't get an SMU offer out of that, because SMU they're hurting right now for recruits, and and Morris and his staff have come in and they've gone after it. They've hit the ground running since they've been in Dallas.
They really have. It's been fun to watch for them, and it's like a 180, because I always felt like June Jones's program they didn't really care about the players they were getting.
They wanted
plug them in.
They wanted June Jones guys. They weren't necessarily interested in the best caliber player that they could get. They were more interested in people that could fit that system.
Right.
And I think the best athletes fit any system, and that's always been the way I've looked at it. And there are definitely some East Texas guys, and not just from Gilmer, but from all over East Texas that should have offers by now, and hopefully they can get some before National Signing Day in a few weeks.
Yeah, I feel like the old SMU staff really alienated their Dallas-Fort Worth recruiting base and also the East Texas base and the Houston base, because they like to go to California a whole lot. They had a lot of players coming out from out west, and that makes sense because June's is kind of that West Coast kind of guy. But it's been really fun to watch Morris move around this area and also really quickly reestablish priorities in Dallas-Fort Worth for that program. I'm excited to see what they can do, not this year, but in years to follow.
Yeah, so while the prize doesn't get any bigger in the state of Texas than a state championship, for these players that are wanting to cement their futures and play college football, there's still a lot to play for individually. So those kind of work together, because everybody does their job as an individual and it benefits the team. So a lot at stake this week, not just state championships. Of course, that's the first and foremost on these players' minds this week, and that's first and foremost on our minds this week. 3 games, 4 teams. It should be a lot of fun. We'll have previews up later this week. I think we'll have a couple go up on Wednesday, and then we'll have the Gilmer West Orange Start preview up Thursday. We already have some features that have run on Wascom and Newton. Mike and I will be going to Gilmer and Mineola respectively later on this week and talking to some of their players and coaches in anticipation of this weekend. So if you're planning on making the trip, we hope that you decide to make a couple of days out of it and maybe stay for Thursday and Friday
Yeah.
And hopefully East Texas can bring home 3 state championships.
Yeah, wave to us in the press box. We'll be in one of the corners. Not
Yeah.
sure which one. But,
Yeah, we'll
you'll
be
able
up
to
there
find us.
somewhere. Yeah.
It's going to be fun. This is while it's a very bittersweet time, it's also the most fun time of the year. I mean, watching these teams and the experiences they're going to get, just being in this stadium and being on TV and things like that is really special to see. And then they usually combine to play a heck of a ball game. So,
And think about this, players. Think about this. Think about how sweet it would be for you to start your Christmas vacation with a state championship. That should be all the motivation you need. 2 weeks off of school, presents, and a state championship. Just keep those 3 things on your mind as you get ready for this week.
presents and parades.
That's exactly right.
Good luck to everyone heading into these games. We're really excited to see what you can do.
Ditto. Good luck to all 4 teams playing this week. We'll see y'all up there in Arlington in a couple of days. And not sure when we'll come back on the podcast. We'll probably have some kind of season wrap-up edition. Maybe talk a little bit about the super team, which we'll be picking at some point next month. So it's been a blast doing these podcasts. I hope the first football season that you've had here at ETSN has been great.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a big adjustment, but I feel like I've got it down.
All right, folks. Well, until we speak again, you'll have a great holiday weekend and then have a great holiday season as we root on 4 East Texas teams to win state championships.
Here I go!